Okay. Welcome to the Wilson Center. I'm Hale Esfandiari, the director of the Middle East program. Today's presentation, Ahmadinejad's confrontation with the Iranian parliament, is part of the series of our Iran meeting. Some of you may know that the United States Institute of Peace and the Wilson Center just published a primer and invited 50 scholars and politicians, both Americans and Iranians, to contribute to this primer. And during the next 6 months, we'll have a series of meetings discussing not only what has been published in the primer, but also the post-primer developments in Iran. Our first meeting is going to be on December 15. So we would like to invite you all to come and attend that meeting. For those of you who are interested to get a printed copy of the primer, please give your name to Kendra Heidemann, and we will provide you with a printed copy next time you come to one of our meetings. We are delighted to have with us today Professor Bahman Baktiari, who is the director of the Middle East Center at the University of Utah. Prior to this position, he was the director of the School of Policy and International Affairs at the University of Maine and served as the director of research for William S. Cohen Center for International Policy and Commerce. His book, Parliamentary Politics in Revolutionary Iran, Institutionalization of Factional Politics, was published by the University Press of Florida in 1997. His most recent publication, Seeking International Legitimacy, Understanding the Dynamics of Nuclear Nationalism in Iran, appeared in Dr. Judith Yaffe's edited Nuclear Politics in Iran. So we are delighted to have Dr. Yaffe in the audience today with us. Dr. Baktiari is going to speak on Ahmadinejad's confrontation with the Iranian parliament, an ongoing story as he's going to tell us and explain to us. Before I give the floor to him, I want to remind you all to please close your cell phones, no text messaging for an hour, no Twitter, no going on your Facebooks, because it interferes with our live webcast. Is your cell phone closed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is very important, because then we will get complaint from our colleagues in charge of the live webcast. Lunch is going to be served immediately at the end of the meeting at 1 o'clock. And you can pick up your lunch, come back, and continue an informal discussion, one-on-one, group-to-one with Dr. Baktiari. Bahman, you have the floor, 35 minutes.
Well,
and then we'll open the floor to questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hale, for that introduction. And I want to thank you for inviting me to this session. And I want to thank also Mona and Kendra, the two staff people who actually make this trip possible. And regardless of what happens in Iranian parliament, if it wasn't for those two, we would not be sitting here right now. So I want to thank those two. And I also want to thank my students who are watching this on WebLink from Utah right now. My students in the Contemporary Iran course, seminar course in Utah right now, are watching this WebLink live. So the good thing is that they don't have any access to ask me questions right now, and for the first time they have to listen to everything I say. So with that introduction, I'd like to first start my presentation with a couple of caveats. One, this presentation is purely about Iran's executive legislative relationship. The presentation talks about President Ahmadinejad's relationship with the institution of parliament, the parliamentarians' reaction to what he's doing. I will discuss some of the aspects of the other societal changes that are taking place in Iran, but in the context of the presentation, I would like to ask your patience to bear with me while I discuss the important institutional relations, and in the question and answer period, I'll be happy to elaborate on any other aspects of change in Iran that we are witnessing today. So it is not a surprise that this week, again, Iranian representatives and Americans are meeting in Europe to discuss the not ever ending Iran's nuclear issue. And the most important question that is on the mind of the policymakers and others who are looking at Iran is really Ahmadinejad's viability and how much influence does he have inside Iran. If you recall, in the last year's nuclear dialogue, the whole question of whether United States and Iran can arrive at a negotiation depended really on the domestic politics in Iran. And it was the domestic politics in Iran that torpedoed that deal that came about last year. So today, it is really even important for us, after all that happened last year and popular uprising against Ahmadinejad today, to really ask that important, relevant question today. How influential is Ahmadinejad inside Iran? And with that, I'd like to point out the fact that our perceptions outside of Iran and inside of Iran are very different. Today, in this latest poll published by the Foreign Policy magazine, President Ahmadinejad was ranked number 1 under the leaders with greatest influence on global events this year. This is itself an interesting observation about a president who has been embattled, who has had a disputed election victory, and is continuously, as we can see in this presentation later on, is struggling for his life with different institutions of Iran. So first, our perception of Ahmadinejad outside and inside are very different. The best perception of Ahmadinejad in Iran as president happened in August of 2009, in the middle of a popular uprising against his presidency. Parliamentary leaders in Iran were anxious about his new cabinet and the officials he was planning to introduce. It was difficult to ignore the tear gases and the militia attacks on the streets, with the regime facing the most serious threat to its survival since 1979 revolution. Opposition leaders and dozens of lawmakers critical of the president, for the first time in the history of the Islamic Republic, boycotted the supreme leader's official ceremony of swearing for the elected president of Iran. And this was not lost on the supreme leader himself, who in an end remark made a point at those who were absent during the swearing ceremony. From the parliamentarian's perspective, it was difficult to overlook the fact that Ahmadinejad, in the past term of his foreign presidency, had fired 10 ministers, 2 central bank chiefs, and several top officials during his first-term presidency without any consultation with a single parliamentarian. More than any other president before him, Ahmadinejad has taken executive decisions that has irritated the parliamentarians from all factions and all backgrounds. MPs were furious about some of these decisions, and the fact that Ahmadinejad frequently dismissed their role as troublemakers only infuriated them more. A typical code is that when Ahmadinejad appears in the Iranian parliament, a criticism of the parliamentarians is that he speaks to them in a condescending language, ordering them to do what he wants them to do. And he frequently expresses his hope that the ill wishers can be pushed into despair by parliamentarians supporting what he wants. Later, in asking the question about what he thinks about parliamentarians, he used a very interesting Persian statement. آدم‌هایی که لای چرخ چوب می‌ذارن. People who put spokes in the wheel, of the wheel, meaning they're troublemakers. There are some half a dozen laws passed by the parliament in the last year that Ahmadinejad has refused to sign or just plain ignored because of this reason, that he is not going to submit these bills to a parliament that is interested in making trouble more than in addressing the country's issues as he wants them to do. So his appearance in the parliament in August 2009 provided a rare opportunity for the parliamentarians to confront the embattled president. The parliament debated his proposed cabinet for 5 days, with lawmakers heavily criticizing 8 of his nominees, unprecedented in the previous term, arguing that they were chosen based on their loyalty to Ahmadinejad and not because of relevant knowledge or experience. Conservative deputies who had supported Ahmadinejad all along for his re-election and in 2005 election, for the first time raised serious issues about Ahmadinejad's judgment, his understanding of economic problems facing the country, and the security issues posed by the rising popular discontent. Despite these concerns, one person who seemed to be totally loyal to Ahmadinejad and unconditional in his support of Ahmadinejad was the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. Again, in his many unstated and implicit messages to parliamentary leaders in August of 2009, Khamenei instructed the parliament to approve everything Ahmadinejad has proposed for his cabinet. Similar to how he saved him from the disputed election in 2009, Khamenei again resorted to languages of national emergency and religious obligation, forcing the parliamentarians to either take side against him or support Ahmadinejad. But this could not hide the fact that he and the president face more than just street demonstrations. Since his election in 2005, Ahmadinejad has had 2 well-known sets of opponents. Western governments trying to prevent him from obtaining nuclear weapons, Iranian reformist movement which tried to defeat him in the 2009 presidential election. But in the past couple of years, a 3rd set of opponents has begun to emerge from within the ruling conservative movement. This collection of opponents may prove to be more dangerous to Ahmadinejad than the first 2. He may have the support of the supreme leader for now, but the political cost of protecting him is getting higher every day. There are about some half a dozen laws passed by parliament in the last year that Ahmadinejad has either refused to sign or just plain ignored. As of November 2010, senior parliamentarians with unquestioned conservative credentials are making statements about Ahmadinejad that was unprecedented in Iranian history, but also unprecedented in the press coverage that he gets. MP Ahmad Tawakkoli, for example, stated unequivocally the following: despite sincere warnings by well-wishers, you continue to violate the law. Even when the esteemed leader of the revolution also steps in, you do not correct your direction, unquote. These are powerful words coming from a conservative MP against the sitting president. And also is even more powerful because he's hinting at the supreme leader in this statement, questioning whether the cost of protecting Ahmadinejad is worth what the esteemed leader is doing, because he is not simply listening to him. As of November 2010, there are several impeachment bills in the Iranian parliament, with supporters claiming that they have more than the required signatures, while the president remains defiant and confident in his public speeches. Coupled by simmering conflict with the Speaker of the Parliament, Ali Larijani, the questions for us today are the following. Will Ahmadinejad's presidency survive the increasing confrontation with the Iranian Parliament? What is the impact of the continuing tensions with the Parliament on the other institutions in the Islamic Republic? Iranian politics, as many of you know, are dominated by personalities and factions rather than political parties. There are no political parties in Iran. There is no organized political forum or activities in Iran. Hence, personalities and their factions become prominent when it comes to politics in Iran. As much as we are concerned about Iran's nuclear file and spent an extraordinary amount of time on covering the nuclear issue, in the Iranian capital today, all eyes are on the struggle between Ahmadinejad and Ali Larijani, the Speaker of the Parliament and his silent enemy. Rarely have public inside Iran have paid so much attention to what is happening inside the Parliament to the President, and rarely have they ignored him so vehemently on his foreign policy issues than any time in the past 31 years. In the last few weeks, a number of high-profile members of the Iranian parliament, many of them Ahmadinejad supporters, have openly threatened him with impeachment. MP Ali Motaheri, who is a prominent member of the Iranian parliament, the son of one of the founders of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Motaheri, and also a relative of the current Speaker of Parliament. Now, in Iran, as we have also learned as Iranian observers, it is not just enough to study institutions, we have to also study family connections. And family connections today are playing a major role in the struggle that's taking place between Ahmadinejad and his opponent. Ahmad Tawakkoli, which you have his quote here, is one of the most hardline conservative MPs in the parliament. He is very much connected with the merchant class in Iran. He has influence in Bazar, and he has also influence with a powerful Islamic coalition front and many clerics inside Iran. He has taken a very harsh line against Ahmadinejad and recently wrote a letter, scathing letter, outlining 3 major violations of Iran's constitution made by Ahmadinejad, all of them grounds for quote-unquote censure and impeachment, unquote. Tawakkoli actually used these words in his statement. Censure and impeachment itself is a powerful indication of the situation. Tawakkoli is now accusing the president, quote, of ignoring instructions from the supreme leader, again showing that the fact that the battle inside parliament has not reached an end or a resolution, the issue now is reaching again the supreme leader. The supreme leader himself now is a target of many discussions within parliament, but many of the conservative leaders, aware of their political boundaries and loyalties, do not mention some of the statements. Hence, they keep talking about quote-unquote legal obligations of the government. Now, recently, they put out a Majlis Research Center report, which it was damning to the President Ahmadinejad, as well as the supreme leader, who has kept defending him. According to this report by the Majlis, 15-month period ending in March 2010, the government complied with reporting requirements in only 59% of the 195 laws passed. Moreover, most of the reports were filed late. This report filed officially by the Majlis Research Center, effectively has indicted Ahmadinejad's government for not complying with the government rulings. And here, Ahmad Tawakkoli is leading the charge against them. Hence, despite these voices again, we see the battle lines in Iran again focus too many times on personalities, Khamenei, Ahmadinejad, the Speaker of the Parliament, Larijani, and the Green movements that later on we can talk about. On paper, the 290-seat Iranian parliament looks like any other parliament. Over its history, the parliament has evolved from being a debating chamber for notables to a club for the Shah's placement during the Pahlavi era, to a body dominated by elite members of the Islamic Republic who have passed the trust level of complete loyalty to the political system of the Islamic Republic. In theory, it can remove cabinet ministers and impeach the president for misconduct. In practice, it plays a second fiddle to the Guardian Council. Its dozen members are directly or indirectly appointed by the Supreme Leader. They vet all legislation and all candidates and can veto parliamentary legislation. As you can see in this slide, the political system of the Islamic Republic itself is a complicated system that favors a form that is called organized chaos. Now, in terms of the organized chaos format that you see, the Supreme Leader remains the only viable, stable office in this whole structure. And if you look at the arrows of his influence and his role, there is no arrow to the parliament directly from the Supreme Leader. The parliament as a whole, if you notice, which is here, if you can see the direct leader of the armed forces, judiciary, there is no such a line directly from the Supreme Leader to the parliament. The Supreme Leader has to communicate his wishes through the Council of Guardians and through them to the parliament. The fact that he's continuously issuing statements directly to the Speaker of the Parliament itself creates a problem within this organized chaos political system. It creates a problem because it also raises questions about the president himself, which is listed here under the Guardian Council, and how he is bypassing maybe even the Guardian Council to go to the president, and so forth. So in many sense, Iranian parliamentary structure within the political system is not made for handling difficult issues. The parliament in Iran, as much as it is a vital organ for debate within the Islamic Republic, institutionally is placed in a very difficult situation. It is not as capable as it seems to bring about major changes. Yet, as many scholars of parliament have argued, it could make the life of the president miserable. And through this kind of miserable attitude that it could create through the life of the president, maybe it could bring changes to other institutions that are taking place in Iran. So Ahmadinejad's heavy-handed pressures in many ways puts the parliament in a difficult situation. If it wants to react to Ahmadinejad, it will have to react against many organizations, many of them unelected Guardian Council. And if you notice, the Guardian Council approves candidate nominations. No parliamentarian, like the congressional politics in this country, wants to be not elected. So the first thing they look at it, the Guardian Council holds it level over their head. You go against the leader, your candidacy is not going to be approved in the next round of the election. You don't behave, your candidacy is not going to be approved in the next round of elections. So in that sense, the Iranian parliament is put in a difficult situation. Hence, despite all these limitations and despite all these complexities in the Iranian political system, it is just amazing how much change we see coming from this institution, and it's just amazing how far the elite and the personalities in Iran go to express their opinion. During the parliamentary elections of 2008, Ahmadinejad's faction, despite a vehement support of the leader behind him, secured only 26.5% of the Majlis space. This was a huge defeat for Ahmadinejad because he was so confident about the Council of Guardians vetting of candidates. He was so confident about the supreme leader supporting his candidates, and he was so confident that people with limited ability to exercise their democratic authority are not going to be able to hand them this defeat. They went as far of changing the election date in 2008 closer to the Iranian New Year. So they moved the election date from February to March 14, a week before Iranian New Year, when everybody goes on a holiday, to make sure nobody comes in the street and votes in order to prevent such an eventuality. Yet despite that, they were not able to prevent it. And if one sees the United Principalist Front, the Right Compromise Grand Principalist Coalition, Left Compromise, reformists, independent religious minorities, this is itself an amazing composition for a conservative parliament. It's amazing in terms of how diffuse it is and how much less influence the current president could have. This was the first hint that Ahmadinejad and his cohorts will face greater resistance trying to pursue their agenda. With about a third of parliament consisting of reformists and independent candidates, observers saw a good chance that this bloc could attract critical members among conservatives, especially if Ahmadinejad continued with his inflationary economic and confrontational foreign policy. More importantly, the election victory of Ali Larijani and his election to the speakership of the parliament signaled a new phase of parliamentary relationship. Now we go back to the personalities in the emerging parliamentary struggle with Iran. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament today is not just any Speaker for the Parliament. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament today comes from a very powerful family within the Islamic Republic. His brother, Ayatollah Sadegh Larijani, is the chief of the judiciary in Iran. His other brother is an advisor to the supreme leader. Another brother was a deputy minister, former Minister of Health, and Fazil Larijani, the last one to the right, was a diplomat, senior diplomat, spent years and posted in Canada. Their family has a reach in every organ of the Islamic Republic, particularly in critical organs to the administration of the government. So many observers inside Iran were shocked when Ayatollah Khamenei appointed Larijani's brother as chief of the judiciary. Now, how could you have 3 divisions of government, 2 run by 2 brothers? Isn't that a conflict of interest? Now, these are the things that Ahmadinejad began to raise. And they raised also the question of whether having a cleric so young, like Larijani's brother, and having the other Larijani, Ali Larijani, as the Speaker of the Parliament, does that mean the regime or the system is on the way of doing something legal to Ahmadinejad? Meaning, Iranians, as conspiratorial as they are, sometimes they raise issues so axiomatic, so logical, that no logic can dispute. And the logic that they raised here was to read between the signals here, that does the appointment and reaching of Larijanis into this critical field means a 1-2 punch. Parliament impeach, judiciary prosecute. Or parliament cannot do anything, judiciary will do something. So this element of Larijani reaching power in Iran is a critical factor in the parliamentary executive relationship. Larijani, true to his reputation, has allowed several anti-Ahmadinejad MPs to take important leadership positions in the parliament building and committees. He has energized the committees to issue reports, and he has energized the meetings of caucuses within the parliament. He's confident that the supreme leader will stand up for Larijani if the battle comes between him and Ahmadinejad. And he's also confident that he needs to build the constituency to put the supreme leader in a difficult situation should he decide not to go to his support. Nevertheless, again, is an unknown question today how far Larijani can push his friendship or his relationship with the supreme leader. And also is an important unknown question that why the supreme leader is so insistent, despite parliamentary opposition, to protect Ahmadinejad. Well, I have one theory for why the supreme leader may be so unconditionally for Ahmadinejad. This is just a theory, and like everything else, it is not based on evidence, so when you question me later on, remember that. One reason may have to do with the fact that, contrary to popular commentaries, the disagreements among the conservatives are not strictly limited to economic policies. Behind the scene, the same anti-Ahmadinejad conservatives all criticize the president's bellicosity towards the West and his poor handling of the nuclear issue. These critics behind the scene, again, have become more vocal with the increasing threat of war against U.S. or Israel over Iran's nuclear issue. Larijani himself resigned over this matter as a chief nuclear negotiator for Ahmadinejad, expressly because Ahmadinejad's style threatens the national interests of Iran. The Tehran mayor, Ghalibaf, who is a former revolutionary commander, confidant of the supreme leader, also publicly and sharply criticized Ahmadinejad's confrontational foreign policy, calling for more maturity and intelligence, unquote. Now, this is an insulting term to use, particularly in the Persian etiquette of politics that is calling someone that you have to become more intelligent and more mature in dealing. Others, again, within the same conservative ranks, have admitted that the threats of Iran's foes should not be taken lightly, directly contradicting Ahmadinejad's confident public statements and dismissing of the UN Security Council resolutions as, quote, simple pieces of paper, unquote. When I heard that statement from Ahmadinejad, and I had been reading what the other critics were saying, Ahmadinejad was not responding to the West or the Americans when he said UN security resolutions are simple pieces of paper. He was responding to his opponents inside Iran, that you are taking these things too seriously. They're nothing but simple pieces of paper. Hence, it can be inferred from their positions behind the scene and their newly achieved power in the parliament, the Grand Principalist coalition that they have formed, that this group of conservatives behind the scene are engaged in heavy campaign against Ahmadinejad. Hence, publicly, they are putting the supreme leader in a difficult situation. So one reason this could be pushing the Khamenei to be determined to block these conservatives from going any further because, again, image and publicity. He cannot afford a weakening of a president that he has so hardly defended for the past 6 years. He has defended on every issue, including election corruption. Failing to do so, according to many of his advisors, will give a strong signal to the opponents that they could take 1 inch and go for a ride. According to one report, Khamenei also is very conscious of what happened in 1979 Iranian Revolution. According to 2 reports, he has told the laity, he's confident, that if the Shah of Iran in 1979 had not been so weak and had not been so irresolute in his response to the revolutionaries, there may not have been a revolution in Iran. It was the weakness of the Shah who brought the revolution. Now, this was some quotations that has come from Khamenei to other advisors. Also, the fact that the Shah began to arrest and jail his own people, unquote. Now, if many of you remember, during the Iranian Revolution, the Shah of Iran began to arrest the Prime Minister of Iran, the Chief of the Security of Iran. All of these, as lessons, are on the minds of these conservative leaders in Iran. So, concerned that Ahmadinejad's confrontational situation with Parliament may spread into the streets and connect to the larger Green movement, Khamenei's motivation in blocking any opposition to Ahmadinejad may have to do with the fact that he does not want any kind of institutional connection to what is happening on the streets. Should that happen, then the political system of Iran would be facing a different situation. But it is also the tension of what is called, and I will end with a conclusion here, that even the Revolutionary Guards themselves are not wholly behind Ahmadinejad. The conflict with the parliament has also created a conflict with the Revolutionary Guards. The Revolutionary Guards today are facing a serious problem inside the country, both in terms of security, in terms of management and power, but also in terms of controlling Ahmadinejad themselves. Ahmadinejad has tried his best to give the guards as much power, as much leeway as he can in order to keep him content. Yet, as one can see in this guards' monthly publication that just came out, in this quotation they put out, quote, "The essence of bringing up this issue when Ahmadinejad derided the role of the parliament and said the parliament is nothing but a cheap institution to come in, the guards officially put out this statement as meaning that Ahmadinejad now is attacking the founder of the Islamic Republic, the great leader of the Islamic Revolution, who had said, quote, the parliament is on the top of the affairs, it said. Unfortunately, this was brought up by politicians and the president himself, a direct attack on the president. The guard publication started spending time, unquote, on unnecessary and marginal issues that are damaging to the people has become the main issue for some of the country's officials. Instead, the focus should be on real issues, such as employment and inflation, unquote. This statement is a direct warning to Ayatollah Khamenei as well, because he is also, meaning you, the supreme leader, are engaging too much in marginal issues. You're engaging too much in issues that are unnecessary. So the reaction from the guard and motivations that I described and the conflict that is going on inside Iran, it shows that the conflicts between the parliament and Ahmadinejad's government are much deeper than ever, challenging other major institutions of the Islamic Republic, such as the Guard, as well as the constitutionally approved processes for resolving conflicts among them. The Supreme Leader's repeated intervention raises serious questions about whether Khamenei is aware of how costly his support of Ahmadinejad has become. In the end, Khamenei's extra-constitutional interventions has undermined the Islamic Republic's political system, strengthening those who have been calling for a re-evaluation of the Supreme Leader's constitutional authority. In this context, and in a very strange manner, the only person who has benefited in this conflict and this struggle is no other than Hashemi Rafsanjani, who is now the head of the Assembly of Experts. Quietly, he has been watching the scene as guards Khamenei and Ahmadinejad chip under each other. He quietly has backed off on many other public statements and just watching, because the weakening of the Supreme Leader institutions effectively strengthened his institution. The weakening of Ahmadinejad also effectively allows him to come in and become a viable candidate later for a future Supreme Leader. I stop with that and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bahman. For those of you who walked in late, could I ask you to close your cell phones, please? It interferes with our live webcast. Thank you. A question to you. You talked about the power of Larijani. We have had in the past other powerful speakers of parliament, Rafsanjani, Karoubi. How do you compare these three? Because Haddad was necessarily not an independent person. He was related to the supreme leader. He was a weak speaker of parliament. But compare Rafsanjani, his role to Larijani, and also Karoubi.
One important distinction to notice in this question is that we have a non-cleric as head of the parliament. The predecessor, Ghulam Ali Haddad, was also a non-cleric. This was the first time since the 1979 non-clerics became speakers of Iranian parliament. And the speakers they're conservatives who became speakers of Iranian parliament. Now, conservatives feel they have the right religious and political legitimacy to attack the clerics. Secular, or technocratic reformists have always found the religious credentials to be lacking when it came to criticizing a cleric. So one thing that Larijani brings into this mix is that he comes from a very senior clerical family. His father is an Ayatollah Osman. He also comes back from an experience that has been in Revolutionary Guards, in media. Lali Larijani was head of the Iranian TV and media. He's also been a nuclear negotiator. And he's also has been a confidant of the leader, and most important, he's ambitious because he was on a presidential ticket in 2005. So you combine all these factors, is a dangerous mix, because ambition, political ambition, connections, religious credentials, it puts a situation here that makes Larijani both very confident of challenging Ahmadinejad. In contrast to the previous speaker, Ghulam Ali Haddad, who rarely challenged Ahmadinejad, rarely took him to court. The way Ahmadinejad has gradually fanned the flames against them, it tells you that he is using the speakership of the parliament as an office when the parliamentarians themselves cannot do it. So the difference I see with Larijani, I see a very smart, calculated man who knows the boundaries of politics in Iran, but has a targeted focus here, and his target is Ahmadinejad. Nothing more, nothing less. So that makes him a very serious challenge to Ahmadinejad.
Thank you. We'll open the floor now to questions. Judy, please. Just wait for the mic and identify yourself. Thank you.
Judith Yaffe, National Defense University. The Supreme Leader's visit to Qom recently, there's been a lot of speculation about why, from wanting to assure the succession in that office to his son, to of a whole variety of reasons. How do you read it?
So difficult to read clerics. There are 300,000 of them in Iran. So the fact that there's so many of them, it shows that how difficult it is to read them. Because if anybody knew how clerics could be so difficult to deal with, nobody wanted to be a cleric. Ayatollah Khamenei's relationship with Qom is a complicated relationship, both in terms of how he feels his situation as supreme leader is not the supreme religious leader. Hence, he has to lobby the senior clerics in Qom to make sure they're respected and they're informed about what is happening. The most serious concern in Qom today around two issues. One, the death of Ayatollah Montazeri, who was very popular in Iran, created a vacuum in Qom among the clerical leadership about who is the highest clerical leadership for the reformists, for the opponents of Ahmadinejad. In response, an Ayatollah came forward, Ayatollah Sanei, and declared himself practically a substitute for Montazeri. The organized conservative clerics who support Khamenei tried to excommunicate that senior Ayatollah, and they failed. They could not do it because other Ayatollahs came and said, you, meaning Khamenei, and your cohort in Qom do not have such an authority. So in that process last year, he alienated a number of them. The Green Movement itself has also alienated a number of the senior clerics in Iran. Now, communications with the clerics is very difficult because they are located in Qom. operation of government is in Tehran. Most of them are over 70 years old. They don't travel that much. It's difficult to travel. And most of the etiquette and protocols of communication within clerical establishment is through visits. By visits, you show respect and you show the fact that you're consulting with them. My interpretation of Khamenei's visit to Qom has to do with the fact to gauge the opposition to Ahmadinejad. He's going to Qom to find out how extensive is it if the parliament is going after this president and he's defending him. By going to Qom, repeatedly after repeated interventions, afterward, there's a timing which is very interesting. As soon as parliament issue gets hot, Khamenei goes to Qom. I mean, my argument was, why don't you go to the parliament? But he goes to Qom. The second challenge that he has in Qom is Rafsanjani and the speakers of the Assembly of Experts who monitors him. Obviously, you may have read in some of the cables and some of the reports have come out that Ayatollah Khamenei may be having leukemia and he's very sick. Sickness, whether it's true or not in Iran, is a huge conspiracy and it could pick up on its own power. When the Shah of Iran was discovered to have cancer, the element of military loyalty to him was drastically reduced just by the news. So today, it is possible, we don't know, but it is possible that the Supreme Leader himself is concerned about his future. And the Supreme Leader is concerned about who is going to make those decisions about him. And those people who are going to make those decisions today are in Qom. They are in Assembly of Experts. And he's concerned about whether the situation in the country today, Ahmadinejad is a short term. Long term is the political system that I showed you. Long term is a political system that has to be protected. And part of the trips to Qom, which has been picking up a lot this past month, may have to do with the fact that there's some concern about the future of the position. As I mentioned, the more he intervenes in politics, the more he uses his coupons and he uses his credibility. And the more he stays involved in politics, the more he raises issues about his future, because more people begin to talk about anybody who replaces Khamenei, we don't want an interventionist in politics. Anybody who replaces Khamenei, we don't want an extra-constitutional person. These are the debates that begin to come. And he may be going to Qom in order to alleviate some of those concerns.
Yes, please. Just wait for the mic and identify you.
Yes, Marcel Wahba, former, retired diplomat and now independent consultant. Bahman, could you shed some light a little bit on the Assembly of Experts, the level of support or lack thereof for either Khamenei or Ahmadinejad? I know Rafsanjani obviously is more in the opposition camp, but what's the level of support in there for the Supreme Leader, since they're the only body, right, if I understand correctly, that could mandate a change?
Assembly of Experts is a clerical body of 86 members, elected every 6 years, similar to a U.S. Senate, but in much less powerful than that. And the Assembly of Experts, as a clerical body, meets twice a year. Its bylaws call on it to meet twice a year, once in August, once in February. And during those two times they meet, they have committees that discuss the performance of the Supreme Leader. They have committees that discuss the operations of the organization under the purview of the Supreme Leader, like the foundations, like the judiciary and so forth. And they have also committees that talk about constitutional changes, if need be to have one. Today's Assembly of Experts is completely polarized and completely riven with factions. Rafsanjani has made his intentions clear. He's made his intentions clear. He does not want Ahmadinejad in power. Rafsanjani has also made his intentions clear. He supports the Green Movement. He wants more voices for the Green Movement leaders. And third, he has also made his intentions clear that he does not believe there should be any accountability on corruption charges, on economic issues that relates to him. So three elements, personal, institutional, and political, have come together. And in that, within the parliament, within the assembly, I would say he has a small minority number of clerics who are beginning to gradually come around him. And Rafsanjani's approach is very different than Khamenei. Rafsanjani does not openly intervene in things. Rafsanjani does not make an issue of the process like Khamenei and Ahmadinejad do. Rafsanjani behind the scene lobbies. And by behind the scene, I've been told he lobbies exactly according to misbehaviors of people. So he has said some things about Ahmadinejad saying he cannot be dependable. And then Ahmadinejad breaks down and does something. And later, he capitalizes on that. Meaning, remember the meeting we had about that issue? That kind of lobbying, that kind of activity he's engaged in the past year has put him in line to replace the supreme leader. He is now being talked about. People talk about him. People say there is no alternative but him. And his pragmatic approach, his ability to keep the uniformity of the Green Movement leaders, Mousavi, Karoubi, and his son is involved in a large degree, has given also some credibility. Has given some credibility that he is a person that understands the problems of Iranian society. Khamenei does not understand the problems of Iranian society. So in the Assembly of Experts today, there are serious discussions. Again, Khamenei, as usual, is relying on connections and on powerful network of friends that he has. The chair of the committee in charge of the evaluation of Supreme Leader, Hojatul Islam Kharrazi, his daughter is married to Khamenei's son. So what better way to neutralize someone by arranging an arranged marriage between the sons and daughters of each other? So Hojatul Islam Kharrazi, who's the head of the committee in the assembly, is very, very lax on Khamenei. He frequently talks about give him another chance and so forth. And that's very important. Another important factor is the guards, revolutionary guards. Revolutionary guards are intimidating force. And many of these clerics do not want to confront the guards, do not want to confront a situation. Senior Iranian clerics avoid confrontation, no matter what. And confrontationalism favors these radicals. And in that sense, I think Rafsanjani has both the trends and the politics of the country favoring him, his style, which is not confrontational and not active, may not be that strong for him. But he is a viable person, and as I've said in my other presentation, I think Rafsanjani is one of the most powerful people inside Iran.
Yes, please. Just wait for the mic.
Hi, I'm Babak Isfandiari. I'm an intern here, actually. And my question was about whether you perceive there's any discussion within the Assembly of Experts or any of the other government bodies, whether there's a calling for a reform of the Constitution to bring the system of Waliyat Faqih to a more quietist tenor, to a more passive stance, I should say.
Yeah. Well, among the opponents, some of the leaders of the Green Movement, there is a discussion about that. There's a discussion about the constitutional reevaluations or revision of Iran similar to 1989. Now, in 1989, when leaders were concerned about the death of Khomeini and how his death is going to impact the political system, they got together and discussed the constitutional arrangement of the country. They felt that centralization of power is a better guarantee to future of the Islamic rule than the current arrangement that allowed a prime minister and a parliament and a weakened president. So in 1989, we don't know whether Khomeini supported, he was sick, but Rafsanjani, Khamenei himself, they're very close friends. They got together, discussed for a reevaluation, and then they eliminated the position or the post of the prime ministership. The elimination of that post was Mousavi, who is now an opponent. Now, when I said personalities, I think, play a major role in Iranian politics, part of the animosity of one of the Green Movement's leaders today against Khamenei, Mousavi, has to do with that. Has to do with the fact that he felt he was eliminated from the system, not in a legitimate way, by dissolving the constitutional role he had. So if they did that, today, many of the Green Movement leaders have asked, why cannot that be done with a Supreme Leader position? Why can we not create a committee Because originally in the Constitution it stated if you cannot select one person of credibility, you must have a committee. And you must have a committee to rule. And today, the argument of a committee rings favorable to clerics in Qom. Clerics like consultative committee issues. So that, again, I think is beginning to come. Now, it is how you raise the issue. 90% of the problems in Iran, understanding the issues of Iran, is not the fact that we don't understand it. It's the fact that we don't understand how issues are raised. How issues are spoken is the how question. Politics of Iran is a complicated politics. People have their own language. If we expect overt, clear language of something, the question you asked, you will never get an answer. But if you go back to some of the past vocabulary they've been using, like the charter of the Green Movement that was issued, go look at the charter of Mousavi. He says Iran is better ruled through consultation and through group. That means he's thinking about if he comes to power, he prefers a committee, not a supreme leader.
Bahman, back to Larijani. Why did he have to run from Qom? He's not from Qom. Why not from Tehran?
He was born in Qom.
Oh, yes, but his residence was Tehran. Why did he have to go to Qom?
Iranian parliamentary regulations are...
Put it another way. What is the importance of Qom for someone like Larijani who decides to, if he wants to run for parliament, he should go to Qom? Immediately after the elections of 2009, Rafsanjani went to Qom and stayed there for 3 weeks, trying to lobby. What was he lobbying for? So talk a little bit about it.
I think we have to be careful not to exaggerate this location a lot. I mean, Qom is like any other city, is like an exaggerated version of a Vatican with a lot of power. And in Italian government, as you know, Vatican is a recent creation. It was early this century that Vatican was arranged and agreed with Rome and so forth. Qom is a center of learning that has been politicized by the political clerics. Majority of the clerics in Iran are not political. According to one research, only 1% of all clerics today in Iran are political clerics, meaning majority just go about their lives. Majority are go about running their seminaries, running their education. They are sensitive on two issues. One is social issues. Clerics take social issues very seriously. So many clerics in Qom are concerned about how the government, for example, allows certain freedom for women. Many clerics in Qom are concerned about how government does not do enough to implement Islamic restrictions. Those are their concerns. So their power comes through connections and concerns on social issues, and their power also comes from the fact that as a whole, they have not played a political role. And in Qom today, I can say with confidence that majority of the Qom clerics are not supportive of this regime. And majority of the Qom clerics follow Ayatollah Sistani in Najaf. Ayatollah Sistani is a very popular person in Qom. You don't need to be, one of the amazing thing about Shiaism is that to have an Ayatollah to follow, you do not have to have two things. The Ayatollah does not need to be in your country. Two, the Ayatollah does not need to be alive. There are many Iranians who follow Ayatollah Khoei after his death. They're just saying, we just feel comfortable following him. He's said everything he has, and so forth. So that element, I think, in Qom gives a special power, but I believe Larijani represents a new class of technocrats, conservative technocrats, who are able to be a replacement for clerics without wearing the clerical robe. There is an anti-clericalism in Iran today, and Ahmadinejad contributes to that a lot. Anti-clericalism in Iran can be seen in terms of how clerics less and less show up in public events, how, for example, Ahmadinejad's vice presidents openly attack the clerics in terms of their intelligence. So there is an anti-clericalism in Iran, and that anti-clericalism is a really dangerous trend in a religious society, because God forbid, if anything happens in Iran with anti-clericalism, clerics, political, non-political, are going to get hit. They're all going to get hit. So Larijani's role is important. I think he's probably the only moderate conservative with religious credentials who could replace Ahmadinejad. And it could be acceptable. Well, as a spokesman, as a voice. He could replace Ahmadinejad as a voice of reason because international community has experience with him. Khamenei trusts him. Parliamentarians support him. And he has a home connection. So I think in that sense he's a powerful person.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Baktiari. And lunch is served outside. You can help yourself, and if you want to continue a discussion with